Hi, welcome to Buzz and Bark Animals. My name is Patricia. And I'm not going to be doing Reiki this week or any kind of sound healing because I ended up having a mast cell activation flare up and it's affected my shoulder. So, my right shoulder, I can barely move it. And obviously, I've been having to do one-handed Reiki on myself and not able to play my flutes right now and not able to type very well and not able to write at all. And so, not going to be doing a whole lot. And it was triggered by pesticides that were sprayed on farm fields while I was in a car that was driving past it. Now, it will eventually clear up, but it's been one hell of a week. So, today I'm going to do a topic. But before I do, remember to like, share, and if you want, leave a comment. And I'm going to talk about what true bonding looks like with an animal. And I'm going to use the specific animal of the dog. Because a lot of us, if we really drill down and ask ourselves, why do we want a dog in the first place? Or why do we want a pet in the first place? It's because we want companionship. We want that interspecies bond. And it's not that easy to get because it does take some effort, and it's not the kind of effort that we expect. It's more of building trust. And if you watch the dog trainer Victoria Stilwell's video, I don't know if she still has it, but it was called The Dog or Me, where she would be helping people who had some really bad bonding with their dogs, we should say, like doing all the wrong things and then ending up with dogs that were not behaving very well, we should say. Anyways, she has like this beautiful bonding that she has with animals. And part of it is things that she cultivated within her personality. So again, I would, if you can find any videos on her, some people have a hard time watching the videos because the dogs are so unruly and it's just really hard to watch. But she's a positive reinforcement dog trainer, so she doesn't use any kind of no cruelty, no shaming, nothing like that. And her philosophy, and a lot of philosophies of the positive reinforcement, is that if you are to punish a dog or you physically harm them because they did something wrong, then they're not going to trust you. Right? They'll be scared of you and they'll obey you, but they're not going to trust you and they're not going to respect you. And not everybody agrees with that. However, that is my philosophy as well. It is what I have seen when I watch people and their animals and I observe. Because when I'm out and I see people with their dogs, or when people talk about their pets and how they interrelate, how they relate to them, I get a picture, right? And I start to see patterns. And so I'm going to give some examples of what it is to bond well with them, right? And I'm not talking about cats so much. I'm not talking about, other kinds of pets. I'm talking mostly about dogs. And so one really good example is the Bhikkhu Panakara, who is a Buddhist monk of the Theravada tradition. Not that you need to know all that. And his dog is a Aloka. Well, if you watch the videos of him and Aloka, so first of all, there's a fated quality that they were meant to come together. And they came together, I hope I'm not going to be emotional, I'm not feeling really well right now. So they came together with a pilgrimage in India. So he was walking with some other Theravada monks, and Theravada monks are the ones that you see walking for peace or doing the different pilgrimages. They're usually barefoot. They have orange robes or that sort of saffron color. They're not Tibetan Buddhists. They're not Zen Buddhists. They're a specific kind of Buddhist, which apparently they say is closest to the original Buddha. But that's a whole other topic. And when they were walking, was it like 40 monks, I think it was. So when they were walking out of the Calcutta airport, they ran into, or past the airport, they ran into Aloka, and Aloka followed them for their whole journey, which was thousands of miles. And during that journey, Aloka became ill. Lots of different things happened, and the monk had compassion for him, and he would, carry him around, find a vet, and all these things, all these sacrifices that he made because of that compassion and that empathy. Well, that compassion and that empathy is what you need. Those are the two qualities you need. So narcissists, please don't apply for that. To have a bond with an animal, you have to be able to empathize with them. You have to be able to feel what they're feeling. You have to be able to see the world through their eyes and feel the world through their sensory. Not that we can as humans do that, but to the best of our ability, even if we have to use our imagination. Because that is the quality that you need to bond with a dog. So you can have a dog that's very loyal, very committed to you, and you're kind of going about a life in a very robotic way, right? So you feed the dog at a certain time, you take them for walks or whatever, but your heart really isn't into it. So all these things feel like a chore. So if you have pets and it feels like a chore to take care of them, then you're not going to bond with them. Because in order to bond with them, you have to have that selflessness. You can't just be thinking, if you're getting caught up in your ego, then you're not going to bond with anyone, because you're just about yourself and how everything else is supposed to serve you. And so what I see mostly with pets, and what I see when I look at videos, of course that's not really a good example because people usually make videos out of their ego, when it comes to animals, although that's not always the case. There are some times where you see these beautiful bonds between animals and humans in videos, but if it's something to get more monetization, or if it's to get more followers, or if it's a clickbait kind of video, then that's not bonding with animals. Or if they're dressing their dog up to look a certain way so that they can get more hits, or they're making their dog do things that are uncomfortable for the dog just to get a good video, and you see this a lot. And the way you know that the dog is uncomfortable is the tail is stuck between the legs, or maybe it's wagging but it's really slow, or you see the white of the eyes, or the dog's like licking their lips a lot or doing that yawning thing, or you see them trembling. Well, that means that the animal is uncomfortable and they don't want to be in a video, right? And they don't want to be dressed up, and they don't want to do those things. Now, when those people make videos, that's coming from the ego. That's all about the human. That has nothing about the comfort of the dog. And don't even get me started on that, because that is something that just gets me infuriated, even though I'm trying to be mindful and all the rest of that. And it's not serving the animal, and it's actually not serving the human either, because it's enabling like bad behavior in the human. It's enabling what do you call it? All about me, because when a person has their TikTok or their Instagram or whatever on their dog, and they're dressing them up and they're doing all these little dolly things, that's about them. And it's a reflection on their own personality. It's their own shadows coming out. It's them needing acceptance, right? And they're using another creature to get that acceptance for themselves. Now, this would have not really existed before social media. Before social media, it might have been maybe dog shows, right? Or some sort of competition where the dog winning is a win for the human. So it's the human living. It's like when humans live through their own children. This is what it's like, except instead of children, it's their dogs. And that's not bonding with a dog, right? And you can see like bonding with a dog that is a working dog. So if it's a border collie and it's a shepherd and the border collie and sheep, well, through that work, now border collies love working. So German shepherds love working. There's a lot of dogs that want to work. And when they get to be along humans and work, such as a police dog, or even the dogs that are for helping people, the service dogs, there are certain breeds of dogs that when they're working and they're working along a human, there's a bonding. So that work could be with somebody that's disabled. And so depending on how that disabled person treats the dog, and I've seen them treat the dog really well. I've seen, things where it's really sad because they're not treating the dog well. But mostly I've seen like a bond, with the dog and the human. And that's good, because if they're depending on the dog to help them and they're disabled, they need that bond. However, That's not always the case, because there's also like there are farmers who have dogs and they treat their dogs really bad. Especially, like I'd seen like videos in Greece where when the dog is no longer, or hunting dogs, when they're no longer of service, say they become older, they toss them out or whatever, and they do cruel things to them. And that's not what this video is about. But there's also the people who respect their dogs, and especially if it's a working companion, so it's their partner. So you see a lot of police and they have their canine, partner, and there's a bond. There's a bond, especially if it's the same dog and the same police officer for like the whole career, or until the dog dies and then they have to replace the dog, but for that whole career of the dog. And they want to, again, a lot of dogs, they want to work. Okay, so let's get to the monk and his dog. The way you can tell that there is a bond is the way that Aloka looks at the monk, and the way the monk looks at Aloka. And of course, the monk has, Panakara has mindfulness training. He's a monk, so he would be like, if you were talking about an athlete who's in top form, then you would get like your super athletes, right? Your Olympic champions and things like that. So the monk is the equivalent of an Olympic champion, but in the spiritual realm. And that's why monks get so much respect, is because of their daily practice. Instead of, doing athletics and training every day in that way, they're training their minds, right? And they're also being of service, and they're doing all these things where they have to stay in integrity. And so usually with monks, that mindfulness is being in the moment. And one of the ways to bond with an animal is to be in the moment. And so who would be better to bond with a dog than a monk or somebody practicing mindfulness? Because mindfulness is the quickest way you can bond with an animal. And so that mindfulness can be sitting outdoors in the sun and being grateful for everything, right? Being grateful and feeling the sun and paying attention to the body and paying attention to the wind and everything that's in the environment and really focusing on it, right? And when you can get into that state of mind, whether it's shamanic or mindfulness or whatever it is, animals will be drawn to you. So when you see these like horse whisperers and these people that you think, wow, they have like a special gift with animals because animals come up to them. Well, it's because they're not putting their ego out in front of them saying, this is what I want from that animal. I want to get this from them. Because even with humans, if you want something, if you're expecting something from somebody, they're going to want to run away from you, right? Because instinctively, we all want our freedom. And when we want to serve, we serve, right? And when we want to do something, like when we feel out of love or kindness to do something for somebody else, that's different than somebody, and I've had to learn this lesson myself, than, expecting that this person's going to do this for you and this other person's going to do that for you. And then you see people gaslighting people or doing the victim thing or whatever. That's manipulation, right? And nobody wants to be around a manipulative person, whether it's subtle or, whether it's unconscious or conscious. We all pick up on it consciously, and animals especially. So animals know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and if they don't like what you're thinking or feeling, they will leave. They won't, they'll run away. So if you're out in the woods or something and you're having some pretty horrible thoughts, or you're thinking like negative thoughts about the animals in the woods, like, you see a deer and then you start thinking about, oh my God, ticks or whatever it is, well, that deer is not going to want to come anywhere near you, because now you have like an uninviting energy about you. And so if you want to be one of those people that can go out in the wild and birds land on you and, and you have this beautiful bond with animals, then you have to not, although my dad was an exception to the rule because he wanted to get photos of birds and he was able to get it, but he had expectations. I'm not sure he was like, again, the exception to the rule. Because usually if you want to get pictures, say, of birds, you have to almost disappear. And I mean, you're still physically there, but your energy has to, you got to blend in, right? You got to blend into the like one shamanic thing that people do, or you can do, is be like a fox, right? So you picture yourself dissolving into the background, right? And then you pull in your energy into your solar plexus, which is that chakra right by your belly button, that whole, like, you know, it even has the bottom of your lungs and that whole area. Yeah, you pull all your energy into your center. So you're not like throwing a bunch of energy out ahead of you. And then you blend into the background, and then you watch the animal, and you feel the animal, and you get a sense of everything that's going on around you. So that's what I mean by disappearing, is you're so in the moment that it's almost like you're not even there anymore. So your focus could be on the sun, it could be focused on a breeze, it could be focused on like bird sounds, it could be focused on crickets, whatever it is. So you get into this state where you pull in all your energy in your solar plexus, so you're not like sending out like energy, because when you're sending out energy, it can seem really aggressive to an animal, even a dog, even your own pet. So if you ever notice, like if you come home from work or you come home from something and you're not in a good mood, I know cats will run away unless they're really hungry, and then they're going to beg you for food. But if they're not hungry and you're in a bad mood, they're going to go somewhere else, right? There could be some cats that want to be healers and they're trying to help you and things like that. But their normal instinct would be to run away because they feel like they're in danger. And that's because they're picking up on the energy. It's not even necessarily you personally. It's the energy you're putting out, because we're all energetic beings. So with a dog, they usually greet you when you come home and all the rest of that. But if you're in a really bad mood and you're like shouting or whatever, they're not going to stick around, right? They're going to go in another room. They're going to want to go outside. Even if they want to go for a walk really bad or anything like that, they're not going to want to feel that energy, because it just feels, or they'll start shaking it off. So because dogs can't handle that tension. And so when a dog this is another thing you can tell when they're getting nervous or anxious or just irritated, is they'll shake. Like, not like, like when they're coming out of the water, or, but they're not wet, and they'll just start shaking because they're trying to get that tension out of their body. And that's one of the ways that they do that. And if they're super loyal and they're taking a lot of like this energy in, what's going to happen is their chakras are going to get blocked, especially, maybe the root chakra, because they don't feel safe, but they feel like they're obligated. So when an animal has obligation, that's not the same as them bonding with you. That's fear. That's fear that if they don't do what they think you want them to do, they won't get fed, or you'll abandon them. And a lot of dogs especially are afraid of going to shelters, because telepathically there is a network where dogs know what's happening to other dogs. And if you even mention the word shelter, or if you even have the image in your head or in your mind, and you're talking to them, or you have an image of them being in the shelter, you're gonna notice they're gonna get really twitchy. Because that is one of their fears, is to be abandoned. And the equivalent is, like them being in a shelter or being on the street. That is what abandonment is to a dog. But you can also abandon them emotionally. And when you abandon them emotionally, you're going through your own thing. You're not doing it on purpose. Maybe you had somebody die and you're going through a grief or whatever. You can, unconsciously, emotionally abandon them. And it's not done on purpose, and a lot of times people are dealing with some really stressful situations, like a divorce, or somebody dies or whatever, and the pet is the last thing anybody's thinking about. However, if you're wanting to bond with the animal, you have to make that extra effort and make sure that animal's being taken care of, like you're not forgetting to feed them. And if you are going through such a rough time, you might want to get some therapy, and also have a friend help you out. So have a friend come over and feed the dog. Have a friend come over and spend time with the dog. Don't just abandon them in the sense that you're neglecting them, because you're going through a hard time, and people go, yeah, you're going through a hard time, whatever. If you need to have somebody take the pets for a while and take them to their house or something else like that, or maybe you got to get I don't know if you can get a foster program, because it's still your dog, you're not having it adopted out, but get some help. Don't be too proud or whatever that you don't get help, because what's going to happen is that animal is going to feel emotionally abandoned, and it's going to make them eventually become ill. Because when we have, like, in Reiki and energy medicine, what happens is you have an emotional body, you have a pain body, you have a mental body, you have a physical body, and you have a spirit body. And a lot of the times you start getting tension and repetitive things happening in your life and you don't pay attention to it. And then it's in the spirit body, right? And at that point, you can deal with it spiritually, and then it's done, right? You just remove it from that spiritual aura, that spiritual energy, and you're fine. But if you don't, then what happens is it goes into the mental and emotional bodies. And the mental bodies is when you have certain thoughts or beliefs, and they turn into patterns, and then those patterns eventually turn into physical disease. The emotional body is different, because the emotion is trapped in the body. And so getting somatic work, or myofascia work, or Reiki, something like that, cranial sacral, to release that. But what's going to happen is you need to feel that emotion. You need to really feel it. Journaling can help, as long as you don't censor yourself. And then you can just rip up or burn the pages when you're done. But journaling's really, really good. Emotional freedom technique, the tapping. Because what happens is, if you have something trapped in the emotional body, is it's going to get into the physical body, and it's going to cause disease. But if you can release those emotions and deal with those emotions before it gets into the physical body, then you can avoid getting disease. So at least the physical diseases. You might still have a mental or emotional condition. So it's the same with animals. Animals also have a spiritual body, an emotional body, a mental body, and a physical body. So if a dog is being neglected because something's going on in the family, or there's moving going on, like relocation and having to pack and all the logistics, you might want to hire somebody to come in to be with the pet. Could be a pet sitter, could be a dog walker. That dog needs attention, right? They're not able to just be, because we have this idea, they're unconditionally loving. Well, yes and no. They put up with a lot, but it affects them emotionally, it affects them mentally, it affects them physically. And they'll still be, loyal to you and whatnot, but it affects them, right? And then it affects you too, because now you're not able to bond with the dog because you're not really giving them what they need emotionally and mentally. And then, and also leaving a dog in a backyard all day, or going to work and just leaving a dog for 8 to 10 hours in a house or an apartment, and not having a dog walker, not having somebody come and be with the dog, or leaving them some sort of mental stimulation, or something like that. They're not going to bond with you because they never see you, right? Why would you want a pet that you're never going to see except on the weekends and the evenings? It's not fair to the animal. Yes, and I know we need to go to work, we need to do all these things, but we can also change our lifestyles. People can work from home. I mean, you can start a business. I know it's not that easy. Or you could work for a company that allows you to bring your dog to work. Or if you have a bookstore, you can bring your cat to the bookstore. Or, but cats can take care of themselves a lot better than dogs can. Dogs, because they bond with us, they need to bond with us, they need to be with us. Cats are not pack animals, dogs are. And pack animal means that they need a sense of family, they need a sense of community. And so when people just leave a dog out in a yard all day, and then they're surprised when the dog runs away all the time, that dog's just doing what they need to do to stay mentally and emotionally, in balance. Because they're bored, they're lonely, they're not getting their needs met. And, and also leaving a dog in a house. There's been huskies that have figured out how to get out. I ended up catching a dog once. I was going across a road and I had to protect this dog from getting hit by a car. It was one of those white, what is it? A Samoyed. It was huge. And they're known for running away. the huskies and the rest of them. So if you're planning on getting one of those, you better be home a lot. You better be taking them out and getting them exercise and getting them some sort of mental stimulation. They're strong dogs. They need physical movement. I mean, these are dogs that can go for, hundreds of miles, traditionally with sleds, in the very cold. They're very tough dogs. They're very smart dogs, So if you're going to get like a dog that's going to be in a house all the time, then you can't get a dog that's a working dog. And you cannot get a high energy dog because you're never going to bond with them. I mean, it's just not going to work. Like, you're just setting yourself up to be sabotaged because, you need to you need to be there with them. You need to be present. You need to be mindful. And that means going about your daily life. So if you're going to be on your phone all the time, or if you're going to be on the computer all the time, or you're going to be watching television all the time, your dog's not enjoying any of that. The dog's not involved with that, right? And the dog wants to go for a walk. The dog wants to be with you. The dog wants to feel your energy. The dog wants to have an exchange of energy with you. And if you can do that, then you will bond with the dog. So back to the monk, the things that he's doing right, even though he's been criticized, because they don't think that Aloka should be walking with the monks for all those miles and all the rest of that. That dog chose to do that. That dog chose to be with monks. So that wasn't like the monks. The monks never forced anything on Aloka, right? He wants to be with the monks. And he is I've looked at him when he's walking with the monks. He's got a relaxed body. He looks very confident. You see him panting, but it's not like overheating. Because you can tell when a dog is overheating. Dogs pant because they can't sweat. So seeing a dog with their mouth open doesn't necessarily mean that that's something bad. Now, as far as feet burning and things like that, you have to be very careful about that, especially if a dog's walking on pavement or whatnot. But you can see the look and the body language between the monk and the dog. And there's almost like a parental role that that Panakara has with Aloka, but it's a beautiful bond. And that is something that anybody can have with a dog. You don't have to be a monk. You just have to be present and mindful. So then that brings it back to, well, how do you become mindful? Well, you practice mindfulness, right? You practice the meditation. When you start slipping into the automatic responses, you start getting yourself back in the moment, right? So it's a practice, and it's hard because we have so many distractions, right? And we were taught that we had to multitask, and many jobs actually have that as a requirement, that if you're going to work for a certain employer, you have to multitask. Now, I don't remember there being a lot of multitasking when I was young. So when I was a kid, I don't remember having to multitask. There wasn't all the stimuli, and I'm not surprised there's so many people with ADHD and all the rest of that, because there's too much stimuli. There's too many distractions, and animals can't handle that either, right? They're just not meant to be that way. And so if we want to bond with animals, we have to get on their level. And their level is mindfulness. Their level is being in the moment. Their level is observing. So you'll notice that a dog, they have a really good sense of smell, right? So they'll sniff the air. They do tracking. Through their sense of smell, they can know where the dogs live in the neighborhood, whether they're female or male, whether they're in heat or not. I mean, just an amazing amount of sensory just within their nose, right? And then the other thing that they have is really good hearing. So they're taking in through their senses, they're getting themselves in the moment. And the more that you can do that with your dog, the deeper you're going to bond with them, right? And so spending quality time is important, whether that's indoors or whether that's outdoors. Oh, okay. Sorry. There's a noise outside there. So anyways, that's my topic for today. and I don't feel well, so I'm gonna get off the camera. I just didn't want to not do a video this week because I do a video every week, and so I got myself up and said, okay, well, I need to do this. And I have a hat on because my hair looks like straw, because of my shoulder. Okay. But anyways, I hope that you got something out of this video, and that if you are somebody that wants to bond with dogs, and you may have already done it, you may have already figured it out, like you may have already cracked the code. And if you have a beautiful bond with your dog and you have some tips, please leave those in the comments, because I didn't cover everything. But the more you can be like a shaman or be like a mindfulness monk, the more you can be present, for yourself. And the more that you are present, the more animals and even other people are going to be attracted to you because you're peaceful. And if you think about it, if you walk into a room and there's somebody throwing a bunch of drama and, creating this like fragmented energy that's floating around, or you got that really peaceful person who's just sitting there maybe sipping some tea, a kind of pensive look on their face or whatever, who are you going to want to be near? Are you going to want to be near the peaceful person, or are you going to want to be in the cloud of drama? And so when you think about the planet, where do you want to place your focus? Do you want it to be on all the drama of the world? Because if the more you attach to that and the more you add to that, it just makes the world more dramatic. So the more mindful you become, then you create peace in the world, right? And a lot of people say, well, I want to live in a peaceful world, but they don't do anything to create that, because it takes effort, and that effort is being mindful. And it's not easy, right? It takes practice. And that means, like, even when I'm making this video, I need to be mindful while I'm making the video. I'm only making the video. I'm not doing anything else. I don't have a phone next to me. I don't have like other things going on. I'm just focusing on making this video and whatever message I need to put out. And so if you're cooking, then focus on cooking. Don't be talking on the phone and doing all these other things. Just focus on cooking, and focus on the smell of the food, and focus on the texture of the food, and focus on how much love and gratitude you feel for the food. And if you're going for a walk, then just go for a walk. Don't bring your phone with you. Don't get distracted. And if you start getting negative thoughts, just stop the thoughts and just say, okay, I'm going to just focus on this moment. I'm going to listen for whatever, like a bird song, or maybe the trees are rustling or something like that. Focus on something else, right? And get yourself back in that peaceful moment. Now, it's really hard for, some of us. I mean, I've had like a lot of challenges, like cognitive challenges and things like that. And I'm not quitting, right? I'm not giving up. I'm still saying, okay, well, I'm going to practice mindfulness, right? And you just do it on a daily basis. So say one day it doesn't go well. Don't give up. You have the next day, do it again. And then eventually what you'll find is that, it takes something like 90 days to develop a new habit. I've heard 30 days and I've heard 90 days. I think it's closer to 3 months. So you have to do the same thing every day for that amount of time. And with meditation, you can start out with 5 minutes. You can find something online like a guided meditation, and then eventually you do 10 minutes and then 15 minutes. And pretty soon you're doing an hour, right? And then you might want to go do a meditation retreat at some point. And meditation retreats are intense. You don't want to do it if you haven't meditated at all, because I did one meditation retreat and we were meditating for, I think, an hour and a half at a time. So we were meditating for 30 minutes and then we were doing a walk. And then we sit down for another 30 minutes and then we did a walk. And then we sat down for another 30 minutes and it was completely silent. So the whole weekend was a silent retreat. And the meditations were sit-down meditations. So we weren't like doing forest bathing. We weren't doing anything. We weren't really chanting. There was only one day where we did some chanting, but we weren't allowed to talk. We could chant, but we couldn't talk. And if you've not meditated before, because I had not done a lot of meditation, I nearly lost my mind. And I was bored, and my mind was rattling all over like stupid things, and I thought I was going to go insane. But if you start meditating, 5 minutes a day, and then 10 minutes a day, and then 15, and then you're starting to get a serious meditation practice, then you can go on the meditation retreat and it will make more sense, and you're not gonna feel out of place, right? And you know how to sit still, and you know how to be silent, and you're not afraid to be in that space. Then that's a good thing to do. And if you can do that, if you can meditate every day, then what you're going to find is your dog is going to come and sit with you while you meditate, right? They're going to create a space for you, and you're going to create a space for the dog. And so meditation is another way to bond with a dog. And then the final thing is have structure. So every day the dog gets fed at a certain time. Every day the dog goes for a walk at a certain time. Every day you do all the different things you do with the dog at the same time. And the more you can do that, the more you're going to be dependable, and they're going to feel safe around you. They're going to feel stable. Now, okay, there could be some days where you're sick and you're not able to do it as well, or maybe again you're relocating to a new place, and so you got to start the new structure. But the more you can do that every day, they're going to feel safe. They're going to feel grounded. They're going to have expectations of like, okay, I get fed at this time. I go for a walk at this time. They're going to be less needy. They're going to be less clingy. And you're not going to have as many behavioral issues with them. Because when a dog feels safe, when they feel like they can depend on you, when they can trust you, and is when they're going to be more loyal to you and more committed to you. And that you need to be committed to them too. So that is my topic. I know I kind of rambled. Hope that you get something out of this. If you did, again, leave a comment. And if you have other ideas of how to bond with dogs, like say you have a beautiful bond with your dog, then let us know how you did that. Because believe it or not, a lot of people don't know how to do that. And it's what we instinctively want from them, but we have to make some effort, and we have to make the right effort. And there's really not a lot out there on how to bond with animals, unless you're watching an animal communication channel or something like that, because animal communicators are really good at bonding with other people's pets, and they have to do it. Like when I do animal communication, I need to bond with that animal immediately, and that's not easy to do because I need their total trust. They're communicating with me telepathically, and that's vulnerable for them, and it's vulnerable for me too, to put myself out there like that. So if you want to become an animal communicator, then you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to gain the trust of an animal immediately, because what you're going to get otherwise is they're going to actually lie to you. They're not going to give you, or they're just going to send you around in circles, and they're not going to give you the answers that you need, or they're going to give you like false information. So if you want to become an animal communicator, if you want to bond with your pet, then you do need to be mindful. And you do need to be able to gain their trust, and they have to feel safe around you. So if you're somebody that shouts a lot, or you have anger issues or things like that, then that's something you need to work on. That's not on them, that's on you. And if your animal tends to be aggressive, then that could be mirroring back to you some aggression that you don't even realize that you're putting out. So then that would be, you might want to ask your friends, like your honest friends, not the friends that always say whatever you want to hear, but the honest ones. And you can say, do you think that I'm like aggressive, or do you think that I'm this, or do you think that I'm that? And then listen to them, because that's also a mirror that, if you can curb that, like if you, tend to be angry all the time, then you want to work on that. Through therapy or whatever, and that's going to make a huge difference. Because again, if you were walking into a room and somebody was being dramatic and angry and shouting, you wouldn't want to be in that room. So imagine what it's like for an animal, and imagine if they're trapped in a house, right? So a person can be very aggressive, and then they get a dog, and then they leave the dog in the house, and the dog can't go anywhere. The dog is in the house with that aggressive person, and it can get to the point where it is abuse. So you don't want even there to be subtle abuse. You want to be able to deal with yourself, right? You want to be able to be honest with yourself, and not be like shameful or judgmental towards yourself or blame yourself, but you have to admit that there's an issue and then go and get some help. And that is being vulnerable. And dogs will forgive us, right? Especially if we make the effort and, say, okay, so I have these issues. Or you're in a situation, maybe a bad relationship, or maybe it's a job that's just driving you crazy. Then you need to find another job or get out of that relationship, because that is getting onto your aura, that is getting into your energy field, and your dog is picking it up, right? And so they may be cowering a lot, or they might develop a behavioral issue, right? And then you go and you get an animal behaviorist or a dog trainer or whatever, and it doesn't really solve the problem, because the problem is more on the emotional body, and it's because they don't want to be with you. And the reason they don't want to be with you is because of how you're acting. It's not you personally, but it's how you're acting, and it's how it's making them feel. And you can't really do family therapy with your dog. So these are some points to consider. I am kind of channeling this, so a lot of this information is coming through. I don't even remember what I just said, but hopefully this is a good message for people. And I'm going to get off the computer now because I need to rest. And I hope you're having a good day. And I hope you are bonding with your pet. I hope you're making that effort every day and receiving that love. Dogs are one of the animals that does not live a long time. And depending on the breed, they could live maybe just 6 years, the bigger dogs, to some of the smaller dogs that can live up to 20 years or more, So it's still, even 20 years is not that long if you're wanting to have like a friendship. Because if you imagine like your human friendship and you only have their friendship for 20 years and then they die, that's tough, right? And we have a different bond with animals than we have with other humans. And because their lives are so short, especially with dogs, you want every moment to count, right? And also you don't want to walk around blaming yourself for things or carrying around guilt or shame or I didn't do enough for my dog or whatever, because now they're feeling like you're feeling bad, and now they're trying to overcompensate for your feelings. So if you are feeling guilty, if you are feeling the blame and shame and all the rest of that, and if you're on social media, talking about your dog and people start shaming you for it, then don't go on social media and talk about your dog. Right? Because that's not going to help you to feel those darker emotions. And if you are feeling those darker emotions, then use emotional freedom technique. Go into an energy healer, go to a therapist, and clear it out, because that blame and that shame and that judgment is probably not even about the pet. It's probably something that goes all the way back to your childhood, right? Or it's something that somebody told you once that went into your subconscious and you don't realize it's there. So working on yourself is another way to bond with animals. And again, clearing all those blocks and those obstacles so that you're in the flow. Because once you get in the flow, or also called the zone, then that's another way to bond with animals. And then again, that's also a form of mindfulness. So anyways, have a wonderful week with you and your pet bonding. And if you do like these videos, then please share, like, and comment. Now, I don't know when I'll be doing a Reiki video again, because it's hard for me really to move this arm. Hopefully it will be soon, because I am going to get an acupuncture treatment. I'm hoping that's going to unlock my shoulder, but we'll see. In the meantime, I hope you'll still watch my channel. And you can also go and watch the sound bath that I put up there recently. I think it was last week. I have lots of Reiki videos here. There's lots of topics here as well, so you can listen to other things. What I can do, though, is I can channel still. So my next video might be a channeling session. So anyways, have a wonderful week with you and your pet bonding. Bye for now.